How's it going, backpackers? Dave here with Off Grid. I'm into backpacking, hiking, camping, and gear. And I got another first look for you guys today, and it is this guy right here. This is Gossamer Gear's The One tent. It is a non-freestanding one-person tent, and I am super thrilled to be taking a look at this one for you guys. I got a lot of great stuff coming at you as always. We got the tech specs, we got what I paid for it, why I ended up deciding to buy this thing. So let's just dive right into this. The One off of their website, they list it as a 17.7 ounce one-person tent, but you have to look at the fine print on this guy. So all in with the stakes and everything that they give you here, I believe it weighs right around 22 ounces. It is a sil poly material. And let me just throw all of the dimensions right up here on screen for you guys to look at, because there's quite a lot. I really enjoy from Gossamer Gear's website the fact that they ended up breaking down everything for you to take a look at, so that if you wanted to configure it in a slightly different way, you're able to do that. But the skinny of it is the main shelter is 17.7. You've got a stuff sack that's about 9.7 grams. They list everything in grams, so you kind of have to do the conversion if you want to figure it out in ounces. We've got what they call a clothesline, that's 5.8 grams. We've got a stuff sack for the stake, which is, or for your stakes, which is 4 grams. And then they give you a total of 8 aluminum stakes, which are 11 grams each, and an extra cord, which they give you 2 of, and those are 7 grams each. So the way that I'm going to end up pitching it, it requires a minimum of 6 stakes, so I'm probably going to bring 8 total, but to use them for something else, 2 of them for my poncho that I like to use it for, to have an additional stake for the tent in case one of them breaks. The stakes that the tent comes with do not seem like they're that durable, or that they're going to hold up super well over time, so I might end up swapping them out sooner rather than later. And they're your standard V stakes. They're not Y stakes. I think the Y stakes hold just a little bit better, but I might end up using them for a little bit just to see how they fare out in the field. The material, again, like I had mentioned, is a sil poly, which is a little bit different from your standard like regular poly type of material. It's a little bit more hydrophobic, which basically means that with a standard nylon, such as my 3FUL gear, which is the one that I had previously and kind of graduated over to this one, that tent, it basically means that it's going to soak up more moisture. So if you're in a particularly heavier rain, it's going to end up soaking in more of that wetness, so that you're going to be carrying more weight the next day, which means you're going to have your tent out to dry a little bit longer. This material that this tent is made out of is just going to shed that weight a lot more and a lot better. I'm not sure if it's 100% waterproof. There might be a little bit that gets in there, but it's a lot more what they call hydrophobic, which means it's going to be able to repel that water a lot more easily. What else can I say about the shelter? I can give you the dimensions of the tent right now. It is a total length of 84 inches. We've got the head end width of 33 inches, and then the foot end width ends up tapering down to only 21 inches. So I'm a little bit concerned about trying to throw my Nemo Tensor insulated long and wide into this tent bathtub to see if it can actually fit with a little bit of space around it. Because of how long it is, I might be able to like throw it a little bit higher up at the head end and maybe get a little bit more out of it. But based on these numbers, I'm a little bit scared about like the overall footprint of the floor area. They have a length of the ridge line, which is about 43 inches, and then the interior height of the ridge line of 45 inches. So it says on their website that it fits a 25-inch wide pad, but one that's tapered. So my Sea to Summit non-insulated XT pad is 25 at the head end, and then it tapers down at the foot end to I think about 18 inches, something like that. So it would definitely fit that, no problem. But I am, again, a little bit concerned about like having a fully rectangular pad that's 25 inches from head to foot. So let's get into the price point right now. Listed on their website, I have about $299.25. Definitely try to hunt around different podcasts and other types of sources if you can to try and find a discount code. I was able to find one for about 15 to 20% off, so it definitely made this one a worthwhile investment. I consider this tent sort of like I do with my recent review of the Gossamer Gear Mariposa backpack as more of a mid-level tent. Just like the backpack, I considered more of a mid-level. And that is because of a couple of different reasons. It's because of the material that it's made out of, it's because of the price point, and a couple other things that I had thought of. But you know, it's definitely not mid-level because of the fact that it's non-freestanding or requires 2 trekking poles to set up. It's another thing that I can mention on this guy right here. What else can I mention on this? As far as like the interior goes, for the 1P, there's only one pocket that is sort of right near the door. Another one that I want to mention to you as far as like a video goes, if you want to check out another great first impression or first look at this tent, is my buddy Jared over at Outside Comfort Zone. He did a great first impression of this tent as well, so you can check that out and kind of see what his likes and dislikes were about it. One of the things that he had mentioned in his video is that the door ends up going in a particular way where it's situated at the head end rather than the foot end, and the fact that the tent is pitched in such a way that the center poles do not go directly in the center of the tent. It's kind of moved a little bit closer to the head end so that you can maximize the overall space when you're kind of laying down or when you're going to sit up in your tent. But the way that the door is kind of zipped, he had mentioned that it is sort of in the wrong spot. A lot of times the door is positioned closer to your foot end so that you can kind of just sneak in with your butt into your tent and then just kind of rotate over and kind of slide right back into position. But the way that the door is situated on this tent, you kind of go in on the head end, so you kind of have to get in on the head end and then snake your feet in that way. I'm not sure that that's going to be a huge issue for me, but it might over time. I have yet to see on that one. The jury's kind of out on that one. As far as like other like creature features with this tent, they have 2 loops on either side, like closest to the trekking poles, that you can kind of hang something up. I might end up using that potentially for a sort of like a mock shift ridge line that can go from like left to right. I'm definitely going to use it to hook up my Gigapump lantern and pump combo electronic that I use all the time, so that I can have sort of that you know, illuminating light at night if I want to read or watch a movie or whatever. So that's pretty cool. It comes with a couple of different guy out points at the head and foot end. But what's really great about this tent is the fact that it only really requires 6 stakes total to set up. They give you 8, but I think that's really just for the head and foot end pullouts. But what I'm really amazed by with this tent is the fact that I don't think I really need to have the pullouts in order to gain that livability space. Much like I did with the Lanshan Pro 1, I felt like I needed to guy out pretty much everything, the back wall, the head and foot end of that tent completely, because you know, if I didn't, then the overall interior livability of that interior space just kind of like went out the window. So I think with this tent, you really don't need to do that, which basically means that it's a lot easier to set up as well. The fact that it only requires 6 stakes, it makes it super easy. Now, if you're just using 6 stakes, it's going to be obviously 4 in the corners and then 2, 1 for the door and then 1 for the back end. If you don't use the 2 additional stakes or you don't use the additional guy lines on it, your bathtub floor is kind of just going to be floating instead of actually staked down. So I'm a little bit curious and I'm a little bit hesitant to see how that's going to fare out in like windier conditions. So I had only set up this about like once so far, and I was inside the tent for about a minute or 2, and I was doing it pretty quickly because I didn't want to have like cops rolling by and trying to shoot me away. But you know, so far I gotta say that I'm really impressed with it. They have these pull back doors for both of them, so you can open up both doors pretty wide, and then they've got toggles with elastic bands around them to kind of hold them back. That's pretty standard. I've seen that in a lot of different models of different tents. The other thing that is kind of unique about this would be the back wall of the tent. It comes up pretty high, and then they have an additional mesh screen and then a covering off of the back end. That is pretty unique. I haven't seen that in too many other tents. The only one I can think of right now would probably be the MSR tent. I forget what it's called. I think it might be the Hubba Hubba or something like that, where they have that back end closest to your head that comes up really high. What this is going to do, especially for this type of tent, is that it's going to increase the overall breathability of it. It's going to add an additional layer of ventilation to kind of come through that back end. Now, again, on my Lanchamp Pro 1, I had that back wall that pretty much went all the way to the ground, so I didn't get a lot of breeze coming off of that back wall as much, so I really like that design of this tent. And then the other thing that I can say that's pretty unique about this would be how the front door kind of latches on to the front guy out there. They have a buckle for one side of the door, so that would be closest to your foot end, not the head end. The head end's a little bit shorter, but for the foot end they have this buckle that attaches to the line rather than having, I've seen more of like a forked design before. That's what the Lanchamp Pro 1 had, and a couple other people used that design as well, but I really like the buckle on this one because it feels a little bit more secure. It's a little bit less finicky. It's just really easy to kind of clasp that in and then unbuckle it if you wanted to tie it out and get both doors open for max ventilation. So that's really cool too. And then how the tent is designed as far as the overall interior space of the tent is really cool as well. So they tell you in the instructional video of how to set this up that you should angle both of your trekking poles kind of away from the tent. So you have the tip end that you put into the ground, which they have a grommet for. That's really cool too. That really like secures it in place. The tip end's gonna go down closer towards you when you're like sitting in the tent. So it's gonna be closer in on your sides, and then the trekking poles go up and away from you. So that really increases the overall livability and decreases the overall claustrophobic effect that a lot of other one-person tents have. So depending on how you look at it, it could be a pro and it could be a con. The fact that it uses two different trekking poles is kind of a con, because if one of your trekking poles breaks when you're in the field, you have to either find a stick or figure out a way to repair that one trekking pole in order to make it work. But the pro obviously is the greater livability and more interior space on the inside. Definitely feels a lot more roomy than a lot of other traditional one trekking pole non-freestanding tents. And I think the last thing that I can mention for you guys is that the tent body and the tent floor is made out of a 10D nylon ripstop sil poly. So if you're not familiar with deniers and the overall size, basically as the overall number comes down, the thinner the fabric becomes when they're talking about a denier of a poly fabric. So 10 is actually pretty lightweight, so you have to be weary of that with this tent. You might want to consider using a ground sheet with it. I'm gonna risk it with this tent. It's probably pretty dumb, but I'm gonna do it anyway, mostly because one of the main reasons why I got this tent is that it is close to 7 ounces lighter than my Lanchamp Pro 1. So all in at 22 ounces for a 1P with as much livability that this gives you. That's pretty amazing, guys. So I think that's pretty much going to do it for this one. That's just a really quick run through, first look of the Gossamer Gear The One. I'm definitely kind of hopping on the bandwagon on this one. I see a lot of other channels kind of going for this one, a lot of other people giving this a run for its money, and I gotta say, with everything that I've seen so far, I'm pretty impressed. I think it's priced right, and I think the overall weight savings is definitely going to be worth it out in the field. So I definitely need to get it out in the field, see how it does in rainy and windy conditions. Oh, one more thing that I forgot to mention is that it's all seam sealed, so the weight includes all of that into this as well. But let me know if you guys have tried this tent, if you're thinking about purchasing this tent, and if you have already received this tent and used it in the field, how do you like it? What are the pros and cons about this tent? I really want to hear all about it. But that's going to do it for this one, guys. Thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate you. And remember, if you hit it off grid, make sure you do your research and you make it a safe one. I'll see you on the next one. And I don't know what to say right now. The other wall on the front wall, that doesn't make any sense.